The most successful people can change their identity the fastest. Identity is actually what holds us in the place of performance. When we change our identity at a habit level or at a more self-concept level, that is what enables us to rise to a new level of performance.
What part of your identity did you find it the hardest to readjust in your growth?
Well, I'll be very real with you here.
When you start chasing one thing and you forget about the most important things, like the things that you love, that's really the whole point. What you're saying, freedom to be with the people that you love, to make an impact, to do the things and the experiences that you want, is how do you kind of self-check to make sure that you're keeping balance?
Yeah,
Are you looking for actionable insights from the world's most inspiring individuals? The Built by Love podcast is on a mission to transform your life, your business, and your health. Tune in for impactful conversations with people who do business differently. Avoid burnout, acquire freedom, and live life fully on your own terms. With me, Pete Daly-Dickson, alongside Daniel Bussius.
Welcome to the Built by Love podcast, where we explore how entrepreneurs build businesses, lives, and legacies that inspire love. Today, I'm thrilled to have an extraordinary guest, Clate Mask. Clate is the co-founder and CEO of Keap, the all-in-one CRM and marketing automation platform designed to empower small businesses. He's also the best-selling co-author of Conquer the Chaos: How to Grow a Successful Small Business Without Going Crazy, a game-changing book for entrepreneurs navigating the challenges of business growth. With over 2 decades of experience in helping small business owners achieve massive success, Clate has become a champion of entrepreneurial grit and innovation. His insights have inspired thousands of business owners to streamline operations, scale with confidence, and rediscover their passion for what they do. In this episode, we'll dive into Clate's incredible journey, unpack the key strategies from Conquer the Chaos, and learn how he's helped redefine what it means to grow a business with love, balance, and purpose. So grab a seat, tune in, and get ready to be inspired, because this conversation is about to transform the way you think about business and life. So welcome, Clate. It's an honor to have you on our podcast.
Oh, Daniel, thanks so much. That's quite an intro, and I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, so good to have you. So good to have you with us, Clate. So it's a privilege and a joy.
I feel the same way, Peter. I've known the two of you for a long time, and I'm excited that we get a chance to talk about this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been a long time coming. And we like to start our podcast with a dramatic moment in your life, and where you weren't sure how you were going to see it through, right? Whether it was a scary situation professionally, and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of the woods on this one, or personally. And so what was at stake, and what was that situation?
Yeah. This was 2010. We had changed our pricing model so that customers could get started without putting any skin in the game. They didn't need to pay for any services to get started. And churn had skyrocketed. The board of directors with our investors was extremely uneasy. And a member of the board was calling for my departure. And that was the setting in which we had a very contentious board meeting, and it felt to me like, crap, is the company going away? Are we done here? Am I going to get removed by the board? And so that was a situation back in 2010, and it was a pretty scary scenario for this entrepreneur.
And what happened?
So my lead investor came out and met with me and wanted to understand what my plan was. And I told her what we were going to do in terms of some team changes, some adjustments to our services to help customers get to success so that we could improve churn, and how to stop burning so much cash, because that's what investors really worry about if their investment is struggling because of churn, and then they're gonna have to put more capital in. So I explained to her the whole situation, and I said, we're going to do A, B, and C, and we will get this business to be cash flow positive by the end of the year. You can take it to the bank. And she kind of stepped back and said, okay, well, what should we do about this other board member that is kind of calling for your head? And we removed that board member. He was a good guy. He just saw the world a little differently than I did, and I had met with him, and we parted ways, and so I kind of cleaned up the drama that was going on in the boardroom. We executed on A, B, and C that I talked about. We got to cash flow positive by the end of the year, and we fixed churn by getting the services package right for new customers, because as you know, it's not about buying a piece of software. It's about the strategy and the services that go along with the software that make customers successful.
I've heard you say this before many a times over the years. I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to know you, work with your company, and you've always talked about how important it is to have the right people and to treat them well. And you've always done that in your business. And one of the things we've worked with venture capital companies before, and they say you're not buying the business, you're actually buying the founder, right? Until it
Mm-hmm.
gets to a certain size, that's really what you're buying, is you're buying
Yeah.
the belief in the founder. So it speaks volumes that where you're in that situation, that woman really reinvested back into you, saying, I believe in you.
Yeah.
Have you like thought about that, or?
Yes. Yeah. You're exactly right, and that is what happened, and that's what investors are having to reevaluate. At various junctures over the course of an investment is, do we believe in the founder? And that's exactly what happened that day back in 2010. It was her deciding, am I going to keep backing this founder that we've been behind for the last 3 years, or do we need to think about what this other board member is saying and go in a different direction?
And many don't know this, but that's not the first company you founded, right? You had a company before, back in the day. I mean, I know Keap has merged with Thrive when this podcast comes out. So there's been evolutions. There was Infusionsoft, there's Keap, there's Thrive. But before all of that, you ran another company, didn't you?
Well, I did various different things as an entrepreneur, but never really building a company like this. So I
Right.
I had little side things and projects and different stuff, but really this business is the first one that I built up, scaled, and put a big vision behind it. There's really three jobs of the CEO: set the vision, build the team, and get the resources. And when you boil down all the things that a CEO does, it really comes down to that. And by the way, if they're doing things outside of that, they're outside their lane. But I hadn't really built a business where it was set the vision, build the team, get the resources, and really step into that true role of a CEO. This company was the first time I'd done that.
And when did, sorry,
Go ahead. No, go
so
ahead.
and when did you know? I mean, I've heard the origin story of Infusionsoft quite a few times, but what was the point that two things that you knew you were onto something, and you knew that you didn't have what it takes to make it what it could be, because you'd never been the CEO of a company that size.
Yeah, that's a great point. For the first 5 years or so, we were really characterized as a small family business. And I started the business with my wife's two younger brothers, and we were doing custom software development, and we started to get into CRM software and create marketing automation. And the first point where I felt like we have something was when we started using the automation in our sales and marketing process, and we flipped the dynamic from me as the sales and marketing person chasing prospects to now prospects contacting me. And it happened as magically as you can imagine. The first campaign that we did, we were a struggling small business trying to figure out how we were going to buy Christmas presents for our kids, and I put this automation in place, this campaign where I'd heard our customers were doing it, and I was selling them the CRM product, but I was only using the CRM components of keeping track of notes and prospects and contacts and customers. I wasn't using the automated follow up. And once we started using that, and people started contacting me because they were receiving those automated emails, it was a total game changer. So that was the first time where I realized, oh wow, we've got something here. But that was more like the time where I realized, okay, we've got a business. This thing isn't, it was like we're going to survive.
Mm, 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 mm.
It wasn't like, oh wow, we're going to go
Yeah.
build a big company. It
And
was
that's
we're
always the first point, isn't it? We've got to
Yeah,
survive before anything
that's right.
else.
That's right, exactly. And so that was the first point. Then a couple years later, we had started to bring on customers, and these when you get more and more customer success stories, and people start raving about what the software is doing to change their lives, save them time, grow their sales, give them freedom back in their business. And they started applying, I could start seeing them applying the automation, these automated campaigns in all kinds of different ways, not just nurturing leads. That's when I was like, okay, we've got something here really powerful that we need to get out to the market. And I was noticing that players like Salesforce, and back then, there was a company called Right Now Technologies that was a CRM company, and there was NetSuite that was saying it was a CRM company. And I was like, these companies are not doing a marketing flavored CRM for small businesses. And we didn't know what to call it because there was no such thing as marketing automation back then. We literally were like, we know this is CRM, and we started calling it like a marketing flavored CRM, or CRM for small business marketers. And then one offsite, we were like, no, this is marketing automation. That's the best way to describe it for small businesses. And we coined that term for small business, marketing automation for small business. And it was like, it sounded so weird because there was nothing like it. Today we're like, well, yeah, duh, marketing automation for small business. Back then, as it fell out of our mouths, it sounded like purple zebra. It's just like this thing that didn't exist. And so we started calling it marketing automation for small business. We started to recognize there was a big opportunity, and we knew that there were going to be a lot of competitors. And if we didn't raise capital to go faster, then we wouldn't be able to seize the opportunity.
You're in, and thank you, Peter, because the question you asked, I was literally thinking the same kind of thing. So I'm going to kind of tag team to that. Clate, you're in rarefied air. I mean, the percentage of small businesses that succeed, it's like 40% over the first 10 years. And arguably that statistic with the economical factors is arguably even going lower than that. Not only have you succeeded back in the day, but then also you scaled past 1 million, which the percentage of that is even incredibly smaller. And then you got up into the tens of millions of dollars, right? So, I mean, you're in like and I don't remember the exact statistic, but it's less than 1% of all businesses get to like where you're at.
Yeah.
And for most people listening to this podcast, they're between, $1 million to $20 million in revenue. And those founders have realized, and here's where the question comes to you. And I've experienced when I've scaled that how your business is at 300,000 in revenue is different at 500,000. And then when you start to get to 800,000 and more, completely changes. And as you grow more and more and more, the wheels start falling off the bus, right?
Yeah.
And how you do things and the people you had on the bus are not necessarily the right people. But most notably is the CEO is forced to continue to evolve and change. And if the CEO doesn't change or doesn't embrace that change, right, and go out and learn, the business is going to fail, or at
Yeah.
least it's going to suffer. As Vern Harnish calls it, the valley of death. At each peak that comes
Yeah.
the valley of death.
Yep.
So how are you able to do that? And what was the most difficult point in time of scaling for you, of where you said, I really have to, get mentorship. I have to bring other people. I have to rethink everything. Like, what was that pivotal point for you?
Yeah. So it's a really great question, and there's a lot to it. Let me give the listeners a framework that I researched and vetted out about 15 years ago when Scott and I wrote Conquer the Chaos, the first edition. And then we've watched this play out over the past 15 years. And when I rewrote the second edition last year, I share more. And so this framework is in Conquer the Chaos, but I I highly recommend that entrepreneurs get this framework in their mind because it helps so much with.
Are you ready to take your business to the next level, but continue to be held back by marketing that fails to bring in new customers? It's time to stop settling for lackluster results, wasting your time and money, and focus on a proven formula for business growth. At Built by Love, we're more than a marketing agency. We're your growth partner. As a multiple-time award-winning agency, we specialize in creating marketing strategies that aren't just effective, they're transformative. Here's what we do. 1. Grow your revenue. Our proven systems drive meaningful, measurable results. 2. Elevate your brand. Our strategies will help you stand out and connect with your audience on a deeper level. 3. We save you time and money. Our award-winning team will handle your advertising and marketing with precision and expertise so you can focus on what you do best. Don't just take our word for it. Experience the difference for yourself. Book your free consultation today at builtbylove.com.
The way that we navigate growth in a business. So here's the framework. There is a law in business, and I don't know who wrote it or how it happened, but there's a law that at the ones and threes of revenue, the stage changes. And I coined the ones and threes of revenue, but I did it after studying and researching the data in the Census Bureau many years ago, and then my experience serving small businesses and just watching this over and over and over. And this is particularly true in service businesses. It'll look a little different in like a manufacturing business or something else. But here's what I mean by the stages change at the ones and threes of revenue. At 100,000, you have a very different kind of business than one that gets to 300,000. And from 300,000 to 1 million, and then 1 million to 3 million, 3 million to 10 million, 10 to 30, 30 to 100. The ones and threes are for whatever reason, that's where the markers kind of change in the business. And what happens is you have to change people, process, and products at the ones and threes, or you stall. Now, it doesn't mean you have to change all of them, but what typically happens, and everybody sort of intuitively understands this notion that growth in a business doesn't just smoothly go up and to the right. It's sort of stair steps. And it's stair steps at these ones and threes of revenue. And when you get to the ones and threes, if you don't make certain adjustments to your people, process, and products, then you plateau. And you can prolong that plateau for as long as you want, as if you're not making these changes to people, process, and product. And so what happens is, as entrepreneurs, sometimes we're grinding away and we have this rush of growth that's thrilling, and then it starts to plateau. We don't really understand why. And my message is, if you're at the ones and threes of revenue and you're plateauing, you just need to look at your people, your process, and your systems, of course, which is part of the process, and your products. And invariably, what you'll find is that there is a people leadership change that is needed. There's a process and systems innovation and upgrade that is needed, or there is a product pricing and packaging adjustment that is needed. But one of those three things, and sometimes it'll be two or even three of them, is not getting advanced, and therefore the business is plateauing and it can't make it to the next stage of growth. Mm. So if people will just take this framework of the ones and threes of revenue and then think about that plateauing and ask themselves, well, what is it with people, process, and products that need to get adjusted, then they can release the bottleneck and to start driving the growth. So that's the framework. Now, your specific question is about, the people, and specifically the CEO, the leader of the company.
Specifically you.
Yes, that's right. And quite frequently, I will tell you that the leadership is what's holding back. Usually it's the people that's holding back. In almost every case, when you look at a plateau, there's something in the CEO or the leadership team that needs to get adjusted. And here's another really interesting and maybe sobering fact for some people. Great leaders in a particular role, good leaders in a particular role can help you move one stage change. And stop and think about that. That's a 3x increase in revenue, right? Roughly. If you're going from $1 million to $3 million in a stage change, a good leader can help you make that change. A great leader can help you make two stage changes, 1 to 10 or 3 to 30 or 300,000 to 3 million. And you think a 10x increase, that's a heck of a leader that helps you. I think everybody listening here would say, if I could go shop for a leader that's going to help me grow 10x, I'll take that. That's a great leader that I want on my team. But here's the sobering point. It's almost impossible for a leader to go more than two stage changes, except for the founder. And I've seen this over and over and over and over. And so it's really, really interesting. What is it about a founder that can continue to grow the business past 300,000 to a million, past 3 million to 10 million? Well, they're breaking this law of two stage changes for great leaders. How are they doing that? Well, you have to get inside, and this gets to the answer of your question, Daniel. What we have to look at is, in the mirror, we have to see, what is it that we don't know? What is holding back this company? What is it about myself? The business isn't going to outgrow the leader. So the leader is holding back the business, and the leader sort of intuitively knows that. And therefore, the leader is reading books, listening to podcasts, going to coaching, going to seminars, going to events, learning everything they can. And that is the difference between why that leader can grow more than two stages, whereas a normal great leader will not grow two stages, because they just don't have it in their identity to go do all of those uncomfortable learnings, to squarely look in the mirror, to have a coach call out their crap and tell them why they're wrong and how they're holding back the business. I mean, these are identity shaking things that a founder is willing to do because they love that business so much, and they will do the hard things, and they will, in some ways, it sounds kind of crazy, but they will put the business before their ego. They will put the business before their self. And I mean the self as the ego. They'll put the business before themselves. And most people, human nature is, we have a certain confine that we're willing to work within. And when we have to break our self-concept, we don't want to do that. And that's the difference between a founder doing that work to grow multiple stages versus a good leader or a great leader.
And I guess the reality is that if a great leader did look at themselves in the mirror, like you said, and saw that it was something in them, they would probably be a founder. They're kind of on the way to being a founder themselves, would you say?
Yeah, that's right. And then they want to go do it, leave and go grow in all those ways, right? That's a great point, Peter. There are occasional scenarios. By the way, the implication of this for a well-intentioned leader, by the way, when I first started talking about this and learning it and really studying the heck out of it, it kind of violated a certain leadership bone in my body, where I wanted to believe that people were just going to keep growing and growing. And I reconciled this in two ways. The first way is that a great caring leader will make this model clear to their people and say, here's what you're up against. This is the reality. If you want to be the leader of customer success and grow with us more than 10x, then you're going to have to do founder-like things in going and breaking down your weaknesses, building up your knowledge and your understanding, going out and doing the things that normally a founder would do to try to figure out how to get better. And then you can make it really clear, do you want to do those things or not? And so the first point is, you make it really clear what it looks like to be a good leader that goes one stage, that leads one stage change, a great leader that leads two stage changes, and an extraordinary leader that can go more than two stages, that's founder-like. And by the way, there's a whole movement out there that's been happening in technology recently about this founder mentality. And this is what it is. This is it. And people don't want to hear it because they don't want to break out of that confine of what their identity is. But one of my favorite quotes that I came across a couple of years ago was by a guy named Dan Sullivan, who did Strategic Coach, and he and Ben Hardy wrote a book that called 10x is easier than 2x. And one of the little subtle nuggets in that book is the following line. The most successful people can change their identity the fastest.
Wow.
identity is actually what holds us in the place of performance. And when we raise our identity, and it's true at a micro level, if I identify as someone who bites my fingernails, I bite my fingernails. The day my coach taught me to change, and I did it for 45 years. The day my coach taught me to change my identity as someone who used to bite my fingernails, who no longer bites my fingernails, guess what? Within a couple of months, I had stopped biting my fingernails. When we change our identity at a habit level or at a more self-concept level, that is what enables us to rise to a new level of performance. That's what enables a leader to go more than 2 stage changes. So that was a lot. There was a framework there. There was a lot to that. Hopefully that was useful.
Yeah, amazingly. So, I mean, what are we, 20 minutes in, Daniel? And already we've got more value than in some 2-hour podcasts. So the question I've got for you, Clate, is what part of your identity did you find it the hardest to readjust in your growth
Yeah.
with Infusionsoft?
Well, I'll be very real with you here. I got stuck at 100 million as the leader. Pushed through 100,000, 300,000, a million, 3 million, 10 million, 30 million. At 100 million, we got stuck. And there were a few reasons for that. As again, when you get stuck, what do? People, process, products. And the product issue was glaring for us. The market was screaming for us to go down market and serve solopreneurs. And we were trying to do that. And that was the major hindrance in terms of product. But there was also a people issue with this leader. And the issue was I was leading our board in a more entrepreneurial way where, you shoot for the stars, and if you come up a little short, that's okay. Well, that's not the way to do it when the business scales to that point. You've got to manage the expectations of the board more effectively. And I didn't do that. So I got displaced for 4 years, and the business really struggled. And so when I look back in the mirror, there were a number of issues that I needed to handle differently, but they really came down to ego issues. And that's not an easy thing for a person to admit, but I had to admit, oh, well, I wanted to be able to say we're going to grow faster. And then instead of like, no, let's manage the expectation, grow at a more measured way. And I had people around me, good people around me, team members that were trying to get me to see, hey, let's be a little more tempered in this. And my ego was like, no, man, come on, you wuss, let's go. so that was a real challenge. And then when I got displaced by the board, I was angry. I was upset. I felt wronged. I mean, you think about taking a company through that run and that trajectory. We talked earlier about years earlier, my board member had decided to back me. Now they weren't backing me, and that hurt. That was a very painful day when that happened. And so I had a lot of things I had to work through. And I'm grateful for the learnings that I had. And I will tell you, and I will summarize what I learned. And my coach helped me see this. And this is what I would say to any leader, all of us, when we get into a situation where we have we're not performing the way we want in a business, in a relationship, in whatever it is. I think there are 3 magic muscles that we have to go back and work out a little bit in order to work through the situation. And those 3 magic muscles are accountability, humility, and gratitude. And I will tell you, when my coach helped me see that I needed to be accountable for getting removed as the leader of the company by my board, and I had been dealing with bitterness and rancor for 3 years, frankly. When he helped me see what was going on, I'd stopped working with him for a season because I was no longer calling the shots as the leader. I felt like, oh, I don't need to, work with this coach who's going to teach me to go implement things that I can't implement because I don't run the day-to-day of the business. So I stopped coaching with him, and I stewed in my juices for a while. And then I finally went back and started working with him. And after 3 years, and as I started working with him, it became clear very quickly that I had some self-judgments that were causing problems, and I had some lack of accountability that was causing problems. And I had gotten myself into the situation by over-promising and under-delivering, and I didn't have anybody to blame on that but myself. And so that accountability, and then a whole bucket of humility that goes along with that, when you start to take responsibility for it and you stop blaming other people. And by the way, other people did wrong things, but the ego in us wants to
Trust and love you are bringing to your ideal client.
push on the other people and say it's because of that, instead of just holding our space, staying in the accountability, acknowledging that other people made mistakes, board members made mistakes, team members made mistakes, competitors were pushing on this, all kinds of stuff. But there was an accountability that I needed to stay in, and a humility about what needed to change in me. And then started to come the gratitude that I had a second chance, that I didn't get pushed, that I didn't get fired, which is what usually happens to a CEO that's backed by venture capitalists in that situation, that I had the great fortune of working with amazing employees and partners and customers in a business that I love, and that I could have an opportunity to do that again. It was when the accountability and the humility and the gratitude started to really get flexed inside of me. That's when I got the opportunity to run the business again.
That's incredible. I'm obviously I haven't grown my business anywhere near the feats of what you've accomplished, but a couple summers ago, I was cycling with a group of friends in the entrepreneurs organization, and you go out for a 60-mile ride. You're out there for a couple hours, and
Yeah.
of course, everyone starts randomly talking about their business and things like that. And I remember I was talking to this guy who was very successful, and I was complaining about my staff and complaining about this, complaining about the customers, and he said to me, "It's like fire them." And I was like, what? No, I can't do it. I'm making all these excuses. And he was a former Navy SEAL. So he's very like matter of fact. And he said, Daniel, can I tell you something? I'm like, yeah, sure. Whatever, Jeff. And he said, you run a lifestyle business. You're not scaling your business. You're just running a lifestyle business. And that's okay. And if you just want a lifestyle business, then just keep doing what you're doing. But if you actually want to scale more, then do what I said and stop doing all this thing, because it's you that's holding this back, and it's all of your excuses that's holding this back.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have the right people and this and that, and you're complaining about it, and you can change it. And I remember I just kind of stopped, and it sat with me, and it had to sit with me for probably a year, until finally I realized it. He's right. And it was a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Because it all sits on you, and all this discomfort is from your own mindset and your own actions. And once you recognize that, you can kind of heal, change, evolve, and then step forward. So
Yeah.
it's incredible. You had and there, it's still to this day, but in the early days as Infusionsoft was growing, you had all of the information marketers out there, like the Joe Polishes, like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you've kept close relationships with many of them. And recently, you had a video out there on LinkedIn and elsewhere on social media where you were talking with Joe Polish. Have there been any people, either professionally or through coaching or just through, masterminds or anything else, that have had a profound impact on helping you grow, evolve, and change professionally as well as your business?
Great
Oh,
question.
God. So many. One of the great blessings that I think we were just given was an opportunity to work with amazing marketers in the early days. When we first created our CRM software, we started applying it to this direct response marketing world that Dan Kennedy had kind of curated of these small business direct response marketers. And so people like Reed Hoisington, who was our first customer, and Joe Polish, who was our second customer, these were people who were teaching direct response marketing to their clients, and their clients had no way to track it, let alone automate it. And so that's where we broke into the market. And those guys have been incredible. And then people like when we started to work with more general small businesses, Michael Gerber became a really big customer and influencer for us. And this is before influencers were influencers. It was just like we had these incredible relationships where we helped them grow their business using our product, and we got to see what they did. And that vantage point, that perspective in working with those folks, going to their events, sitting in the audience and listening and learning. And I remember coming away one time after going to a handful of events and realizing, oh yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah, but I'm not doing it. So who cares if I've heard it if I'm not doing it? And most people will stop going to stuff because they've heard it before instead of like, no, do it. It might take you 20 times to hear it before you start doing it, but keep going until you are doing what they're teaching you. And so we've been taught, I would say we had the good fortune of being just at the feet of masters of business and being able to just learn from them and get a practical education that, and particularly in marketing, that I certainly didn't learn in business school.
Mm. You just said something there, Clate, which kind of echoed back to something you said earlier, that your first realization that you were onto something was when you started using your own product in your own business.
Yeah.
I've experienced that myself in my own business, and I've talked to enough business owners in that it's like the whole cobbler's kids syndrome, isn't it?
Yeah.
The cobbler's kids are the ones that don't have any shoes, and
Right.
it's the plumber's family is the one where all the taps are leaking and stuff. Why is that such a common scenario in business, and how do we stop that being the case?
Yeah. Well, I think it's particularly true, when you look at marketing agencies and they're so busy serving their clients. But it's true of all businesses. You're busy serving your clients, and the way to change it is quite simply to have a strategic and operating system that you live by in your business. And we created one inside of our business, then we ended up spinning it out. Um, it's called Elite Entrepreneurs, and it teaches how to create a proactive strategic planning approach that ties your long term with your day to day. And when you do this, you are proactively working on your business instead of allowing the reactive work to rule the day. Let's be honest, that's the default mode that we all live in. We react to what customers need, and of course, we should do that. I'm not saying we don't react to customers' needs, but we have to do that within a framework of a proactive strategy and a vision we have for the company. And that's the problem that people get into. That's one of the symptoms of cobbler's kids not having shoes. That's a symptom of a strategy planning method that ties to the day-to-day operating actions that is missing in the business.
I remember in 2019 at PartnerCon, I think it was either 2018 or 2019, and there was you all had offered an elite entrepreneurs half day. So I signed up for it and I went to it, and it absolutely blew my mind. I mean, that is one of the most pivotal times in my history of my business. I never looked at things like that. And when I walked away from that, I was forever changed in a good way. I had those big sticky notepads of like, this is the structure, this is how you're going to hire, this is this, on my office walls for 2 years, staring at it every day. And so when a day was tough or there was a mistake, I'd look over at that and I'd think to myself, focus. So you've been pivotal in thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of businesses across the world, as well as your partner community. And I want to get to that in a little bit. But first, if we can, Peter, in London, you met up with Clate and his brother. And I want to cover a little bit of maybe gossip, right? And so kind of like in the world of like digital marketing, for years, there is this rumor that the founder of ClickFunnels, Russell Brunson, and the co-founder of Infusionsoft and Keap, Clate Mask, had this falling out at this conference at one time. And then of course people were always like, rumors were like, well, this is why ClickFunnels is having problems with Keap and Infusionsoft and blah, blah, blah. And you guys spoke at a conference coming up. Was there any kind of like tension or beef, and did you guys solve that? I mean, I know for everybody in the industry, in the partner world, like we're dying to know this story.
Yes. All right. Let me tell you. So there was a falling out many years ago, and I'll tell you what happened. And then it was kind of, in kind of a more intense there for a few years when Russell was really beating the Confusionsoft drum, and then it kind of went away, and we weren't really. I wasn't bothered. I don't think he was bothered. Stuff happens as competitors. You just that happens sometimes. And then, you know, years went by and people would say, "Oh yeah, I know, I won't say this about ClickFunnels because I know that bothers you." I'm like, no, I don't. I hadn't had that for years. Like, and my younger self had some beef, but that had gone away a long time ago. And so it was really fun. And I had reached out to Russell a couple different times. We just were never able to connect. Um, and so when we were both together in London recently, I was like, oh, this will be a great opportunity to just talk and make sure there's not any weirdness there on his side because there wasn't for me anymore. And so he talked. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I don't. Neither of us felt any of that. We, had a good chat and a good hug it out, and it was like, yeah, we're good. So and I think we had been for years. But what had happened was as they were coming up, they were sponsoring and doing booths at our icon events, and at an event they were telling people at our event, hey, cancel Infusionsoft and just get ClickFunnels. And we felt like we always felt the reason we had them at the event is because we felt like there was great complementary nature. We never felt like we were direct competitors. To this day, I don't think we're direct competitors. I think we're much more complementary, and I've always felt that, and that's why we were inviting them to our event. And then when that happened, and in Russell's defense, it might have just been one of his guys or whatever. I don't know, but they were clearly and very vocally telling people at our user conference that they should cancel their product and get ours. So the next year, when came time to bring sponsors and people to our event, one of our team members said, "Hey, I don't want to have them sponsor this year because of what happened last year." And so when we did that, they kind of took it as, "Oh, we've like I saw the video on their stage where they're like, "Oh, Infusionsoft, they did us wrong and they've gone against us, so we're picking a fight with them." And I called Russell and I was like, "Dude, what would you do if we came and sponsored at your event and we started telling everybody don't use ClickFunnels, just use our product? Would you invite us the next year?" And he said, "Of course not." And I said, "Well, that's what happened. So don't tell people that we did some kind of dirty thing. Like, just tell the truth of what happened." And he said, "Look, that was just a marketing thing for us to try to have a bad guy in Infusionsoft that we were going after." And I understand that, but I think that it was a mistake because unfortunately our products are much more complementary, and there is truth to the part of the rumor that you said that the products wouldn't work together as well as they needed to because we would try and they were kind of in the mode of that we're against them, and so they ran it that way for a few years, and then they did things differently. And by that point I had been, I was no longer the day-to-day leader, and so there was a whole series of years that went by there where I don't think there was any bad blood, but there was for a couple of years there as we were going through that. And I always felt like the Confusionsoft thing was, sure, the product is confusing, especially if you're a solopreneur, you don't have much of a business yet. And that's who they served. And so it was like, well, for our target customer, for ideal customers, no, this is the right platform. And unfortunately, we were never able to partner with them as well as I wish we could have. Still to this day, we have customers who use both, and I wish that they had a better integration. But that's water under the bridge. There's certainly no bad blood these days, and that's the soap opera for you.
Yeah.
Life is so much more than business, Daniel, and it's one of the kind of core tenets of this podcast. We're looking at business and relationships and health. How have you navigated? Balance is a big word. Is it balance? Your brother Jeff uses the word harmony, which kind of really resonates with me. How have you found navigating that side of your life, the non-business side of it, with these different stage changes you're talking about? 1 to 3 to 10 to.
Yeah, and in the book, I talk about this. The whole premise of the book, of Conquer the Chaos. The subtitle of the second edition, you called out accurately, Daniel. The subtitle of the first edition, How to Grow a Small Business Without Going Crazy. when we rewrote the book last year, I wrote it as the 6 keys to success for entrepreneurs. And the reason is that I had then had 15 years of observing and living and watching it and seeing what works, you know.
Hey there, entrepreneurs and business owners. Are you feeling stuck with marketing strategies that just aren't delivering? Struggling to attract the right customers or boost your sales? Imagine turning those challenges into triumphs with a proven roadmap tailored just for you. Introducing Marketing Built by Love, the game-changing book by award-winning expert Daniel Bussius. Marketing Built by Love is designed to tackle your biggest business pains head-on, whether you're battling low visibility, weak customer loyalty, or stagnant growth. This book provides actionable solutions that drive real results. Here's how it can transform your business. Boost your revenue. Implement strategies that convert leads into loyal customers. Strengthen customer relationships. Create meaningful connections that keep your clients coming back. Streamline your marketing efforts. Save time and money with effective, easy-to-follow systems. Don't let marketing woes hold you back any longer. Take control and watch your business thrive. Grab your copy of Marketing Built by Love today in stores at Barnes & Noble, or order online at Amazon or wherever you buy quality books. Transform your marketing. Solve your business problems. Achieve the success you deserve with Marketing Built by Love. Available now.
As you've said before, Daniel, you know, success leaves a trail, and it's pretty clear that there are certain keys. Well, Peter, when the subtitle of the book is 6 Keys to Success for Entrepreneurs, it begs the question, well, what is success?
Amen.
Because success for entrepreneurs is not just the business is growing. And so I define in the book, my definition of success for entrepreneurs is the following: balanced growth in your business and personal life. And we all have seen far too many scenarios where you've got a very successful entrepreneur, but things are really ugly in the personal life. Drugs, divorce, all kinds of depression, lots of self-destructive behavior. That is unfortunately far more common than people realize. When a business is very successful, but the leader is really, redlining personally. So I completely reject that notion of success. That is not the notion I'm after. We've also seen scenarios where people have lots of time, they've got lots of freedom in their personal life, their personal life's going really well, but the business is struggling and getting starved a bit, and it's not going to be a very sustainable thing to drive that lifestyle for the business owner. So to me, success is about growth, but in your business and your personal life. So I say balanced growth in your business and personal life, and then I have the following phrase: that produces freedom. Because that's really what we're after. We're after freedom. We're after freedom, and we want our business to produce that freedom. We want our personal life to create that freedom. We want to experience that. So my definition in the book is, the 6 keys to success. What is success? Balanced growth in your business and personal life that produces freedom. So to answer your question, really, it's been living those principles that are in the book, those keys to success. And the 6 keys, there are 3 personal keys and 3 business keys. And I start with the personal keys because if you don't get those right, you don't have sustainable business growth. And the three personal keys are mindset, life vision, and rhythm of execution. So how are you executing your life vision? And then the business keys are strategy, automation, and leadership. And what I've observed over more than 2 decades of small business and working with hundreds of thousands of businesses, speaking now to, in aggregate, more than 1 million small businesses, there are proven keys, and they literally are those keys. And if you'll work those keys, they produce the freedom that we're after as entrepreneurs.
I've mentioned it in other podcasts. It's something that has been it's been a hard point in my life, and it was about 5 years ago where I was chasing a number for revenue, and I was like, I'm gonna do this. I don't care, come hell or high water, it's gonna happen. And so what I had before created of like this schedule of I don't take meetings after 2 p.m. I don't do any meetings at all on Fridays. It's work in my business, or work on my business, not in my business. I had all these things. I
Mm-hmm.
threw all of that out the window, and I was working till 10 o'clock at night. I was working weekends, and my marriage was in a very precarious situation. I started drinking lots of wine because I was so stressed out and so wired up. And so then I wasn't going to bed till midnight. And I obviously wasn't sleeping because I was abusing, things. And then I was grumpy during the day. I mean, it was a layered effect that I got to a point that one day I was looking at my life in the mirror. I didn't look healthy. I hated myself. I hated my life. My marriage was bad. I was, and I said to myself, I have literally built myself a prison. Like, if I was literally behind bars, I would have a better life than I've created now. How did this unfold like this? A few years before, I had this great life and I was telling everybody, like, you got to do this too, and whatever. And I really had to take a step back. And it was an incredible situation of self-reflection, that when you start chasing one thing and you forget about the most important things, like the things that you love, that's really the whole point. What you're saying, freedom to be with the people that you love, to make an impact, to do the things and the experiences that you want. So my question for you is there one rule or thing that you see that you're kind of like constantly checking in your life to see if you're, because sometimes we'll make little steps, we'll make exceptions, like, okay, look, I got to do a little bit of work on Saturday, like it's, but that opens the door, and then the door gets opened more and more and more. So I guess that's my vague question to you, is how do you kind of self-check to make sure that you're keeping balance?
Yeah. I'm going to give you the very short version, and then I'll give an explanation. Morning mastery, weekly planning, and quarterly retreat. The morning mastery, people call it all kinds of different things, but some kind of routine that you have in the morning that keeps you grounded, and you're revisiting your life vision. So when I talk about mindset, vision, and rhythm, the life vision, it's, you've got to revisit this every day. We human beings are such an amazing case study in forgetfulness. we 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 can see so clearly something, and we move on. And especially as entrepreneurs with ADHD, most of us as entrepreneurs have some amount of ADHD, and we just forget these things that are really, really important to us, and these people that are important to us, and these purposes, and all this stuff. And so if we don't put it into a vision of what we're trying to accomplish in our life in a balanced way, and look at it every day, then we very easily start to veer off. It's what we do. It's called drift. And Napoleon Hill famously wrote about drift. If you go back and read some of his work, especially one of his best books ever that doesn't get a lot of attention, because everybody knows about Think and Grow Rich, but oh my gosh, I'm going to forget the name of it for a second. It's the one with the devil.
Oh, I know that one.
Go look up Napoleon Hill, keyword devil. You'll find it. In that book, he talks about drift, and it's what we do as human beings. And so to answer your question, briefly, Daniel, we have a morning mastery. We have a weekly planning and evaluation where we look back at the week, see how it went, and we design our upcoming week in a way that will be in alignment with our life vision. And then we do that same thing on a quarterly basis. There is a power in 3 months. It's amazing. 3 months is long enough to get really good stuff done, and it's short enough that the clock's ticking and you got to be on it.
Yeah.
And so that quarterly retreat where we get away from the day to day, go out in nature, get up into a high hotel room where you have vision, perspective, and evaluate the past quarter and plan the next quarter in an intentional, designed way to create the life that you want. that's the short answer: morning mastery, weekly planning, and quarterly retreat. There's a longer answer to it, but I don't know if we have time for it. You can learn more about it in the materials that I give away in my book.
Amazing. Thank you. By
Thank
the
you.
way,
So,
it's Outwitting the Devil.
Outwitting the Devil.
you got there before me, you bastard! I was just about to say that.
I looked it up. I was like, we can't exit this podcast and not mention the book that he's dropping knowledge from.
Yes.
And we,
what kind of a reader am I if I can't remember the title? I've read the book several times, but I just for some reason blanked for a second.
Well, you're a prolific reader, right? So I mean, how many books have you written? Thousands or read?
I have.
So yeah,
6 per quarter for 25 years now.
Yeah, that's amazing. We also can't exit this podcast without talking about the elephant in the room. And we know what that is. And in fact, this podcast has a very close relationship to this elephant in that you were scheduled to come onto our podcast the day you were signing the sale documents of Keap. So what? And there must have been that hugely emotional time for you. Can you kind of just tell us and the listener what that was like for you, kind of the events leading up to it and that day in particular, and what's happened since?
Sure. So after 4 years of not having the reins, I got the reins back and we started to get the growth going again. And we went to go try to get a deal where we could get one new investor to buy out all of our existing investors and reset the table with our board. There'd been so much water under the bridge, mistakes I had made, they had made. And by the way, I'm on good terms with my board members. They're great people. Investors, at some point, they got to get out. They got to get a return on their investment. And because we had made, the cardinal mistake we made was we tried to go down market to the solopreneurs. That was the mistake we made. And as I mentioned, it slowed the growth. I got pushed aside. The people that came in tried to double down and go even more down market. It just caused problems. So, problems happen. Years go by. I'm trying to, I get the reins back. We start getting the growth going again, but we couldn't get a new investor to buy them out. We tried to go make that happen, and so we had to go back at it. But this time we couldn't keep investing in growth. We had to just work for profit. And when you do that, it's really difficult to also get the growth. You're cutting costs and you're getting it to be more and more profitable. And so as we did that, we struggled to continue driving growth. And we got to a point where basically the clock was up. Like it was, investors have a timeline where it's time for them, like their fund requires them to actually get out. And so we were up against that in 2024 and we knew it, we had planned on it. But for a number of reasons, most of which was we were pushing hard on profit, we didn't continue to drive up the growth. And so we had to do a deal. I also knew that we needed to, change needed to happen. It wasn't working for anybody. Like a change needed to happen. And so we looked at, well, what's the best scenario where there's a buyer that will want our product, that will want our partners and our customers and our employees, because there's lots of scenarios when you go out and look at this type of situation. And, we were very fortunate to find a public company that has the vision that we have with the mission to help small businesses succeed, that has a long-term vision about this. And if you know me, I've always had a very long-term vision. And that was the challenge when I got the reins back. Well, no longer did I have a board that had that same long-term. And so it became very short-termism to give them an exit. And so when we looked at all of the options on the table, being able to work with a company like Thrive, where I've known the CEO for 6 years, I know, the purpose and values and mission that exists in that company and the long-term vision he had, that was a good outcome for our employees, our customers, our partners. I see people out there spreading fear and saying, "Oh, the product's going." No, the product's not going away. They're buying us for our product. They're buying us for our partners. And they are more of a, their strength is more at the top of funnel, generating the leads, and our strength, as everybody knows, is more the bottom of the funnel and through the customer life cycle. So for us, we're adding the automation capabilities to what they have, and they are very excited about our partner community because It's something that we've done really well over the years, and they have been a total direct sales force. They've got five or 600 salespeople that are out on the streets, but they don't have a partner channel. And we have a really good partner channel, and we had a very small direct team. So there was just a lot of complementary things. Their top of funnel, our middle of funnel. Their more general marketing and CRM, our automation. Their direct sales force, our partner channel. But the alignment with the long-term vision and the purpose to help small businesses succeed, that was a really good fit. And so I'm really excited about it. People right now, they'll look at the stock price of Thrive and they'll go, oh, well, you're a public company, but you're not getting valued very much. Well, that's because what they've been doing over the past 10 years is transforming the Yellow Pages business, which they bought and rolled up all those Yellow Pages with hundreds of thousands of small businesses advertising in those Yellow Pages. And they converted them first to digital advertisers and then second to software subscribers, marketing, CRM, now automation. And so it's a pretty sizable company that is going to start getting valued over the next couple of years like a software company instead of a Yellow Pages company. And those who are snickering on the sides right now are going to start to see over time the long-term vision of a very good CEO in Joe Walsh, who knows what he's doing, and I'm happy to be partnered up with him.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, how was it for you emotionally, though, to come to that point of this is the end of this particular part of
my role as
journey?
CEO, right? Yeah. It was very challenging personally. When I looked at it from the employees, partners, customers, the strategy, the synergy, that part all made sense. But I was coming to a point where, okay, I'm not going to be the CEO anymore. We didn't need two CEOs. And that was challenging. And it was the first time in over 2 decades that I stopped and really thought about not leading this company into the future. Because I had kind of a vision for the future. And so that was tricky. And I had to go through Joe was great, the CEO at Thrive. He kind of said, look, you could come on board full time and do this, or we could, you could do that. We talked about different things. And I kind of looked at all the different options, and I realized that what I love to do, that small business growth, it just courses through my veins, but there's a very specific strain of that small business growth that is really, really personal and special to me. And that is the SaaS companies that are small and trying to grow. And particularly once they raise capital, because they don't know what they don't know. And I've that old saying of your best position to serve the customer you once were. I have lived the life of a venture-backed SaaS, software as a service CEO, and I love helping them. And so I took some time, and I've had a few clients over the years that I've kind of had on the side and been on a couple boards and that sort of thing. And I love that work. And I came to the conclusion that as much as I love the purpose and the mission, and there's an opportunity for me to do something that's a specialized version of that on a more micro scale. And truthfully, it was we just had our 7th grandchild, and I just kind of felt like I was in a new stage of my life and a new stage of the career. And I had rewritten the book, and I kind of just felt complete on that stage. And so I went to the CEO and I said, listen, I appreciate the opportunity and the generous offer, but I want to do my consulting. And he was great. He immediately said, can I be your first client? And I said, well, I've got some clients already, but I would love to do that. And so I really feel so fortunate, because it's kind of the best of both worlds. I spend a third of my time doing consulting for Keap and Thrive, and intend to do that, for a long time. That's the plan. And then I also have these other clients that are SaaS CEOs that have raised capital, and just being able to help them is super, super fulfilling. So I get to have the impact in being involved with Keap and Thrive on kind of a large scale. And then I get to have the deep, focused, very relationship rich impact with 8 or 10 CEOs that I work with. And so that's what I'm doing. I absolutely love it. I said at our user conference, a customer asked me, they're like, well, so what does this feel? What's this like? And I said, it's kind of like being a grandparent instead of being a parent. As a parent, of course you love it, but wow, is it intense, and it doesn't ever end. And it's just, and as a grandparent, I now have 7 grandkids, and I can tell you it's better than advertised. There are no words for it. It's beyond what anybody can describe. It is so amazing. That's what it feels like being a consultant instead of a CEO.
Amazing.
And
Well,
you
have
feel
answered.
free,
That was my
presumably.
question: is what's the future look like, right, for Clate Mask? That's incredible. Is there? I mean, obviously, you're arguably the expert in small business growth and wisdom. You've witnessed hundreds of thousands of businesses scale from every stage, from every industry across the world, using the software that you and your team have built, and that is going to go on to live as Thrive. So, is there any final sage advice for people that are listening? I mean, if there's one thing that they can take away from, besides, of course, where we're going to get where they need to buy your book and follow you on your podcast and everything else, but what would be that one thing? Like, if there's one thing you're going to take away from this is it.
Well, I totally appreciate it, Daniel. And Peter just said it. He said, you've got freedom. And, there's that's the elusive thing that we're all trying to get in our business. We're trying to get freedom. And it's tricky, and there are lots of different hacks and tools and tips, and certainly that's what the 6 keys to success are all about. What is it? Success, balance, growth that produce in your business, personal life, that produces freedom. And yes, I'm enjoying a version of freedom right now that is just, it really isn't possible when you're the CEO of a venture backed company and you've got a board of directors and you've got all those responsibilities. I don't have a board. I don't have a number I'm going after every day. I don't have a team that needs me that I'm working. I have a different kind of freedom. And I think there's a season for kinds of freedom, and that I get to enjoy that type of freedom in this season. But what I would say is everybody in their entrepreneurial journey is looking for freedom. And I think we got to understand that freedom looks different at the different stages of your business and the different, and you've got to make a conscious choice. Okay. And that's what I had to do when Joe gave me a chance to take a step back and think about what do I really want. I was able to take a step back and go, oh, okay. And, maybe when we first started, you said, hey, you're looking younger. And maybe it's the lightness that I feel, because I definitely feel it. But I would say to everybody out there, I'm going to say 2 things. One is a very practical piece of advice that I've given so many times, and yet I don't care how many times I say it, I'm convinced that we entrepreneurs don't understand it well enough. And I will say it till I go to the grave. And in fact, I've said this. I want on my tombstone to say, here lies Clate Mask, great husband and father. Follow up works. It's follow up. The most practical piece of advice I can give is this: more follow up means more sales. More follow up means more growth. If you're doing less follow up, you're not going to sell as much. And so follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. I mean, it's what is at the core of our software, obviously, but it is really the core of small business success. And I see this across. I have seen the most archaic business. I'm thinking of this particular insurance broker that's got a very successful insurance business with about 20 people working in his business, and their systems are their automation is so poor, it's so awful, it's so archaic, but they are mechanical and maniacal about following up with clients manually, and they do it, and they have people that do it, and it produces revenue and growth and opportunity in spades. He started, it was just him, and then he added a person. He's just grown it, and he's grown it slowly over 15 years, but it's totally manual. And I always think, gosh, if you would just automate this more. But you know what? It's fine. It's working for him. And the point is this: follow up. It works. So that's my first piece of practical advice. The second piece is around the balance and the freedom that I want so much for entrepreneurs, whichever stage they're in, whatever flavor of freedom that they're getting. Because my freedom looked different a year ago, 10 years ago. It's just different depending on the stages we're in. And what I would say is this: the reason why I like balance, and all respect to my brother Jeff, who I love, around harmony or other ways to describe it, is this: the allure of our business is intoxicating, if not um, if not imprisoning for some people. But you described it as a prison at one point. But it's intoxicating. We love, it draws us to it. Our identity gets wrapped up in it, and it is so powerful a force that if we don't keep this image in our mind, and it's the reason I like balance, if we don't keep this in our mind, then we delude ourselves, and we can start thinking we've got harmony, and people around us are like, oh, your harmony sucks. so,
I've heard
so
that.
I've heard it too. Um, so, and I certainly don't get the balance right, but here's why I like the principle. Think of balance as, think of that balance beam, right? Now take the balance beam, take all the danger out of it, put it down on the ground. But there's a clear line that we want to be on to be balanced in our business and our personal life. The reason why I like balance is there are seasons and we move back and forth a little bit. But if we keep that line clear, we won't stray too far. And freedom will be within our reach. And that balanced growth in our business, personal life will be within our reach. If we take away that line and we don't have that image in our mind and we don't know clearly what is that line, I'm going to bet more often than not the business is going to suck us in a direction we don't want. And so my second piece of advice is get clear on what that line is. And in my book, I talk about this. It's creating a life vision in the 5 areas of life and having goals and objectives of things you're working on in the 5 areas. And if you've got those 5 areas, it helps you to get so sucked into the one area of business that you neglect those other 4 areas. And so, by the way, the 5 areas of life, spiritual, physical, social, business, and financial. And for entrepreneurs, I split out business and financial because they're not always the same thing. You can be doing great in business and not great in finance. You can be great in finance and not great in business. So you really need different sets of goals for those 2 things that are in harmony. But when you have those 5 areas of life and you spend the time to be intentional about it and to design that as an entrepreneur, then the business can fit in it. Then you have a line that you get drawn back to. When? In your morning routine, your weekly planning, and your quarterly retreat. Those are the 3 transformational habits that I shared earlier. They tie into this second piece of advice. Get your life vision clear. You won't stray too far.
There's a part of me that wants to not resist what you've just said, but it kind of is on the surface level appears to be at odds with my sort of fundamental belief that life is not a straight line. I have a podcast called Not a Straight Line.
Yeah,
and it's and I talk to in just 2-hour in-depth conversations with entrepreneurs and artists, just exploring their zigzag journey through life. So when I hear you say, you need a straight line, you need a beam, it's like, but hang on a second, that's not the reality.
I'm so glad you said that, because I'm 100% in alignment with you. Life is not a straight line, but a vision of clarity of what you're trying to accomplish is what I'm talking about. Because here's what happens. The reality is you zigzag back and forth all the time. But if we don't know what is our true north, what is it?
That's the word.
Then we stray too far. And that's why I like the imagery of a line. Not to say that the name of the game is to be on the line all the time. Heck no. That's a little too boring, right?
Yeah.
And it's just not reality. So I'm so glad you said that, because I don't mean this in the literal sense that you're always on the line. No. It's that, think of the line as magnetized. Yeah. And so you don't want, it's pulling you back to it. It's not letting you get too far away from it. And you move back and forth across it. And I do believe that the harmony is such that we have greater harmony the greater percentage of our life that we are on that line. Yeah. When we start to stray too far, it creates challenges. And, kudos to you, Daniel, as you called that out. You recognize, I'm getting out of balance. One of my 5 areas has now consumed everything. And by the way, it doesn't just happen in the area of business. That's the most common for entrepreneurs. But sometimes it'll happen in social, and they'll get really so impassioned about a certain social thing, and the business and other things start to struggle. Sometimes they'll get so deep into a physical transformation and a physical fitness that starts to crowd out their spiritual aspects or their social aspects or their business. It's in any of the 5 areas, but it is certainly for entrepreneurs the most common is the area of business that consumes too much of our focus and resource.
I love that you talk about that, Clate. A couple years ago, what I had mentioned earlier, when I was going through my own situation of like, what have I built for myself, right? I had recognized when I was self-reflecting and doing everything to kind of change my life and repair my marriage and all the other things. And I recognized that every year I was very adamant about having aggressive business goals. And this is the revenue, and these are the big things we're going to do, and these are the hires we're going to make. And it was all very detailed, but nothing in my personal life. And then when I stepped away from that, I started putting in I had business goals, which is a completely separate thing. And then I had spiritual goals, like how am I going to give glory to God? How am I going to do it in my way? And I won't go through everything, but experiences, things like material things, finance. And then I added in love, like how am I going to improve the relationships and the love that I have with the most important people? So many business owners kind of forget about that. They're like, here's my BHAG and here's this and here's that. That's like, what about everything else that is setting you up? Like, how about when you get home? How about the people that you're growing or creating, or the people that you have relationships? Like, what about all of those things, right? So, can you tell us, for the listener who obviously like, now I want to go buy your book and literally gift it to all of my staff members and say, read this, where can they find it? And can you say the name again? And then where can they find that?
Yeah. So conquerthechaosbook.com. You can go there to get the book. There's a bunch of free resources, templates for the weekly planning, the quarterly retreat, the kind of life, and it's just free stuff. And it's stuff that I spent years and years and years investing in, tweaking, bought all kinds of different programs, went through all sorts of stuff, and just kind of over the years fashioned it into a version that worked for me. And people will, take it and use it and modify it for their own needs. I'm not trying to say it's the best thing. It's just what really works and what I've spent a lot of time over the years honing. But they can go to conquerthechaosbook.com to get the book, to get the free resources. Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
And you've got a podcast as well?
Yeah, and there's a podcast, the Conquer the Chaos podcast as well. But at conquerthechaosbook.com are kind of all the resources.
Yeah.
Amazing. Clate, it's been such a pleasure. I mean, so much knowledge has been distilled in this episode. Any last words?
I sure appreciate you guys as partners over the years. It's one of the most incredible things about this business that I've been so fortunate to be leading for so long. And now I'm a part of it in a different way, but I love being a part of it. And it's those relationships. It's the relationships with partners, with customers, with our employees. Those are the things that I just appreciate so much. So I love your focus on love. I mean, that really is that's the point. And I've been, I've had people say, oh, you guys sold and you didn't sell at the peak value, you didn't sell at the high point in value and you didn't get as much as you could have. And I look back and I just think, yeah, it's disappointing in some ways in terms of the stock price. But if you look at the totality of the experience, incredible. I talked to a group of entrepreneurs the other day and they said, do you have any regrets? Would you have done it differently? And I said, I could have not raised capital. I could have not gone for it and gone through this incredible upward trajectory. And then it came down and then it got going back up again, but not enough to really get the valuation, which, a lot of times is kind of the key thing everybody's going after. And I said, but if I hadn't done that, I would have missed the experience of a lifetime. And so be careful as entrepreneurs when you're out going raising capital and deciding if you want to hold back because you might lose control of the business. You also might lose the opportunity of a lifetime.
An opportunity always comes attached to people.
Yeah, that's right.
Clate, thank you.
You bet. Thank you guys. So fun to be with you today.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Built by Love podcast. If you found the conversation inspiring or helpful in any way, then head to builtbylove.com builtbylovepodcast and make sure you're subscribed to our email list. Please also take a few minutes to leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts and share this episode with a friend that you think it might help. Each review helps us to spread the message of love to more people. See you next time on the Built by Love podcast.